It said that some highways don't just take you places, they remember you. Black Pine Highway is one of them. Drivers whisper about mile markers that move, radios that answer back, and headlights that follow from inside the trees. Stories of men who checked in but never checked out. Of voices on the CB that shouldn't exist anymore. Tonight, these aren't legends. These are the accounts passed quietly between truckers at 2 a.m. The stories you only hear when the engine is running, and the forest is listening. These are the 10 most disturbing true horror stories from Black Pine Highway. It was just after 2:10 a.m. when I rolled off the main interstate and onto Black Pine Highway, the kind of two-lane cut-through only locals and truckers on tight clocks use. My rig that night was my usual, a white Cascadia with a 53-foot dry van. DOT numbers still clean, tires humming steady, engine temp locked in like it had been all week. I'd been running long enough to trust patterns. You learn the rhythm of a route the way you learn your own heartbeat. Where the road dips, where the pine smell thickens, where the first "no services next 40 miles" sign always leans a little. Black Pine had its own rhythm too. The moment I crossed the county line, the pines tightened in. Not just forest on both sides. I mean, they closed in like walls, black trunks close enough that my headlights couldn't punch deep between them. The road shoulder vanished into needles and shadow. The air looked wet even though it wasn't raining. Like a thin cold mist was hanging low and refusing to settle. My GPS chirped calmly. Way station ahead in 3 miles. That mattered because my paperwork was clean and my hours were fine. But it was one of those nights where you want the routine. Roll in, roll over the scale, get the green light, keep moving. I glanced up and saw the first thing that didn't fit. No mile marker. There should have been one right there. Every mile, thin green sign, reflective numbers. I knew it because I always counted down to the way station. It's a habit like checking mirrors. But the post at the edge of the shoulder was bare. Just a cut stump and a bolt plate like somebody had ripped the marker away. I let it go. Things get stolen. Snowplows take them out. Counties forget to replace them. Then another mile went by. And another. No markers at all. My dashboard clock ticked to 2:17. The cab was warm, heater on low, and I could smell diesel and the faint bitter edge of stale coffee in the cup holder. The road noise stayed consistent. Tire hum, a soft vibration in the wheel, occasional rattle of chains in the sleeper. I tried my CB out of habit. Channel 19, volume up a click. Nothing. No chatter, no trucker jokes, no warning about deer, not even static spikes. Just a low hiss, steady, almost soft. It reminded me of breath through teeth. I switched channels. Same hiss. I tapped the mic, said, "Breaker 19, anyone running Black Pine tonight?" The hiss didn't change. It didn't jump like radio noise usually does. It stayed exactly the same, like it wasn't reacting to anything I did. That's when the road did something else that didn't fit. Curved. Black Pine has curves, sure, but they're the kind your body remembers, the long sweepers that make your trailer lean slow and predictable. This one felt like the road copied itself. Same angle, same tree line, same dip in the asphalt that made my seatbelt tug. Then another curve came. Same again. I checked my speed, 55. I was steady. I wasn't nodding off. My eyes were open and stinging a little from the dry cab heat. I rolled the window down a crack to get cold air, and it came in sharp pine resin and something damp, like the smell you get near an old wooden bridge. I told myself I'd just lost my sense of time. Black roads do that. Forest does that. It's why drivers miss exits and swear they never saw a sign. But then my GPS updated. Way station ahead in 3 miles. I stared at it. The number hadn't changed. Not 2 miles. Not 1. 3. I felt a slow, unpleasant pressure build behind my ribs. The kind you get when you realize you're missing a piece of reality you need. I looked down at my trip odometer. I'd reset it at the interstate. It read 11.4 miles. If the way station was 3 miles in, I should have hit it already. I did the practical stuff first. That's what you do when something feels wrong. You stack rational explanations like sandbags. Maybe GPS lagged. Maybe this was the longer alternate route. Maybe the station moved. Maybe the county line was off. I kept driving. The forest stayed too close. My mirrors showed nothing but black shapes and my own marker lights. No headlights behind me, no taillights ahead. The road felt like it was floating through the trees, cut clean and perfect, like nobody ever used it except me. At 3:05 a.m., I passed a mile marker. It shouldn't have mattered, but my whole body reacted like someone had finally turned on a light. The sign was rusted, bent inward at the bottom like it had been clipped by a plow. Reflective numbers on a faded green plate. Mile 13. I exhaled without meaning to. Then, not even 15 minutes later, after more of that breath hiss on the CB and those repeating curves, I saw it again. The same rust, the same bend, the same faded streak down the left side. Mile 13. I didn't slow down at first. My brain tried to reject it. Maybe there were 2/13ths county maintenance mistake. Maybe I was off by a mile. But the bend was identical. The rust pattern was identical. The bolt heads were in the same positions. I'd seen enough broken parts to know when something was the same piece of metal. My hands tightened on the wheel until my knuckles hurt. The cab felt smaller. The air felt thicker, like the heater was pushing warm breath against my face. I looked at my dash clock. 3:22 a.m. My odometer read 27.9 miles since the interstate. I did a quick mental check of fuel, and hours like that would anchor me. Fuel fine. Air pressure fine. Oil fine. Hours plenty. Reality not fine. That's when the way station appeared. It came out of the trees so suddenly I almost missed the entrance ramp. 1 second it was forest and black shoulder. The next it was concrete, faded white stripes, and a big overhead sign that read, Black Pine Way Station. All commercial vehicles must stop. The sign's reflective coating caught my headlights and flared bright, then dimmed. The letters looked too clean compared to everything around it. I turned in. My trailer rolled over cracked asphalt. The weigh-in lane was empty. The scale platform sat there like a dark pond. The booth windows were black. No interior light, no glow of screens. But the gate arm was up, like it was waiting. I eased onto the scale, stopped, and listened. Normally you hear it, intercom click, a voice, a beep. Instead, there was only the faint hiss from the CB and the distant tick of my engine cooling. I sat there a few seconds, then rolled forward slowly. No green light, no red light, just darkness. I parked in a side bay and killed the engine. The silence hit hard, big and heavy. Without the diesel vibration, I could hear the forest outside. Wind moving through needles, a soft creak of branches rubbing. My cab light clicked on. My logbook was on the passenger seat, bills tucked in the folder. I looked at my own paperwork like it might tell me something. Then I climbed down. Cold air slapped my face. The lot lights above the station were off, but my headlights painted the ground. I walked toward the building, boots crunching on gravel, every step loud in the quiet. The way station door was cracked open, just enough for a thin wedge of darkness. I pushed it wider and stepped inside. The smell hit me first. Not rotten, not sharp, just old. Like dust and cold concrete that hasn't seen sunlight. The lobby had a counter and a bulletin board with faded notices. A desk lamp sat tipped on its side. No power. No people. I called out anyway because you do even when you know. Hello? Dot? Anyone here? My voice died fast in that room. On the counter was a logbook, the old paper kind stations keep when systems go down. It was open, pen clipped to the spiral. I leaned in. The last entries were dated today. That made no sense because the place looked abandoned. The pages weren't curled from constant use. They were clean. I traced the list with my finger, line by line. Then I found it. My truck number. My unit ID. Written in block letters I recognized because I'd written it 1,000 times on bills and fuel receipts. And next to it, under time in, was 2:13 a.m. That was 3 minutes after I'd entered Black Pine Highway. Under timeout, there was nothing. I stared at it so long my eyes watered. My mouth went dry. I couldn't hear my own breathing anymore. Only that soft hiss, like the building itself was exhaling. I checked the pen clipped to the book. It was warm. Not room temperature warm, warm like it had just been held. I backed away from the counter and looked deeper into the station. The hallway behind the desk was dark. Somewhere back there, a door creaked once, slow, like a hinge settling. I didn't go investigate. I didn't call out again. Whatever part of me still believed this was a simple mistake snapped clean in half right there. I went back outside fast, not running but moving with purpose, like training. Like a driver stepping away from a flipped trailer, not wanting to be near it when it shifts again. The moment I reached my truck, my marker lights flickered. Not all of them, just the ones on the trailer, left side, front to back, a ripple of orange fading and returning like something passing behind them. I climbed in and slammed the door. The cab felt too warm now, like a sealed room. I started the engine. It fired right up, but the sound didn't comfort me. It felt like I'd turned on a generator inside a tomb. I grabbed the mic again, voice low. Breaker 19, anybody copy? The hiss changed for the first time all night. It deepened, thickened, and under it, like a voice behind a wall, I heard something that wasn't words. More like a slow counting, steady and patient. Not on the radio, in the cab. I looked at my passenger side mirror. The station behind me sat black and still. Then I saw movement at the edge of my headlights, just beyond the scale lane. A shape standing where the road left the station and disappeared into the trees. It didn't step forward. It didn't wave. It just stood there like a person-shaped absence. A darker patch of dark, and I couldn't see a face. Only the suggestion of shoulders, arms at its sides. My foot hit the brake hard enough to hiss air. I threw the truck into gear and rolled out, tires thumping over the lip of the entrance ramp. The moment my front bumper crossed back onto Black Pine Highway, the GPS updated like nothing had happened. Continue for 0.9 miles. Merge onto I. A mile marker flashed by in my headlights. Mile 14, then 15, then 16. Normal, clean, real. I didn't stop until I hit the interstate and saw other taillights. I didn't breathe right until I heard real CB chatter. Guys complaining about coffee and DOT. At the next safe pull-off with bright lights and cameras and people, I opened my logbook to check my hours. That's when I noticed something else. There was fresh ink on the edge of my paperwork folder, like someone had tested a pen. A simple number, written small and careful. 13. I tore through my bills, checked my fuel receipts, checked the back of my hand like I'd written on myself. Nothing else. But my unit ID sticker on the dash had been scratched. Just a thin line, like a fingernail dragged across it. And for the rest of that week, every time I glanced at my GPS on a wooded back road, it would sometimes flash, just for a second, like an error. Way station ahead in 3 miles. Even when there wasn't one. I still run nights. I still take tight routes when the clock demands it. But I don't run Black Pine Highway anymore. Because mile markers don't just disappear. And nobody signs you into a way station you haven't reached yet. Unless the road has already seen you before. Black Pine Highway had a way of swallowing sound. Even on a normal night, you'd feel it when you turned off the interstate. Like somebody shut a door behind you. The tires still sang on the asphalt, the engine still pulled, the trailer still tugged on every curve. But everything beyond your cab went quiet, muffled by pine and distance and the kind of darkness that doesn't reflect light back. That night I was running a white Freightliner Cascadia, 53-foot dry van, light load, boxed retail freight headed north with a delivery window that didn't care about weather or bad vibes. I'd been driving long haul for years, long enough to trust my instincts and long enough not to worship them. Most bad feelings can be explained by fatigue, caffeine, too much time alone. It was 12:06 a.m. when I hit Black Pine. The air was cold but dry, the kind that turns your throat scratchy if you crack the window. The sky was moonless. My headlights carved 2 pale lanes through a tunnel of trees. The pines leaned in on both sides, black trunks and dense branches swallowing everything beyond the shoulder. I ran my routine checks without thinking. Mirrors, gauges, speed, lane position, the faint vibration through the steering wheel, the steady hum of rubber, the smell inside the cab, diesel, vinyl, old coffee. CB was on, like always, channel 19. Low chatter earlier on the interstate had thinned out once I hit the cut-through. That didn't bother me. Black Pine wasn't a heavy truck route. It was a shortcut. At 12:14, the CB made a sound that didn't match the usual static. It wasn't a pop or a squeal. It was a dry crackle, like someone dragging a thumb across a mic, followed by a clean, hard inhale. Then a voice came through. "Driver, don't stop near Pine Cutoff. Channel 9. That snapped my attention because Channel 9 isn't for small talk. It's the emergency channel. You don't just wander into it unless you're calling for help or you've got your radio misset. Mine wasn't. I looked down. My selector knob hadn't moved. The voice came again, closer to the mic this time, strained like the guy was trying not to be heard. "Don't stop. Not there." I lifted my mic, thumbed the button. "Copy that. Who's this?" "You need state police." A pause. The cab filled with the soft hiss of the receiver. Outside, the road was straight for a stretch, dead centerline glowing faintly in my beams. Then the voice answered, low and fast. "Where you headed?" "Northbound," I said. "Running freight. I'm about 20 miles from Pine Cutoff." Another pause, like he was listening to something on his end. When he spoke again, his words were tighter. "Keep it rolling. If you see lights, don't trust him." Now my brain started stacking rational explanations. Maybe a wreck ahead. Maybe kids messing with flares. Maybe somebody spooked by a road crew. I tried again. "Where are you calling from?" The answer came so calm it felt wrong. "From behind you." I didn't respond right away. I just glanced at my mirrors, left, then right, smooth and automatic. Empty. No headlights. No marker lights. No faint glow of a vehicle cresting a hill behind me. The road behind was a black ribbon vanishing into trees. I stared a second longer than normal, waiting for something to appear at the edge of my beams. Nothing did. I pressed the mic again, keeping my voice steady. "I don't have anyone behind me, driver." The hiss rose. The crackle returned like a tongue clicking. "Check again." I checked again. Mirrors. Empty. But something subtle shifted in my cab. Not a sound, more like the feeling of pressure changing, like the air got heavier for a moment. My skin prickled under my jacket. The heater vent kept blowing warm, but my hands felt cold on the wheel. I forced logic back into place. "What's your handle?" I asked. "You got a unit number?" Silence. Then, faintly, like he'd turned his mouth away from the mic. "Too late." The CB went dead. Not quiet dead. Dead. No hiss. No background fuzz. Just nothing, like my radio had been unplugged. I tapped it once, hard, like that does anything. Checked the power. Everything looked normal. I kept driving. The road started to dip and curve. The pines thickened. The beam of my headlights caught fog that wasn't there a minute ago. Thin and low, drifting like smoke just above the asphalt. It wasn't enough to hide the road, but it softened everything around it, making the tree line blur at the edges. At 12:27, I saw the first sign for Pine Cutoff. A reflective arrow on a green board, bolted to a post, pointing toward a narrow side road. The sign looked old, peppered with small dents like buckshot or gravel strikes. The shoulder around the cutoff was wider than usual, like people had pulled off there often. Dark tire marks in the gravel, crushed pine needles. I remembered the voice. "Don't stop near Pine Cutoff." I didn't plan to, but a part of me still wanted to understand. Wreck? Abandoned vehicle? Someone needing help? You don't ignore emergencies on principle, but you also don't play hero on a dead highway with a sleeper full of freight. I eased off the throttle a little, eyes scanning. That's when my headlights hit the burned-out rig. It sat just past the cutoff, angled half on the shoulder, half in the ditch. The trailer was charred down to its ribs, blackened metal beams rising like bones. The cab was worse. Paint blistered away, windows gone, interior exposed and scorched. The smell reached me even through closed glass. Old smoke and wet ash, like a campfire that died days ago. The cab door was open. It hung there crooked, barely attached, swaying slightly in the breeze as if someone had just stepped out. I rolled past at a crawl, hazard lights off. No reason to announce myself. My hands were tight on the wheel. I watched the cab as my trailer pulled alongside. And that's when I saw the CB mic. hanging inside the burned cab by its coiled cord, swinging faintly like a pendulum. It shouldn't have survived a fire like that. Plastic melts, rubber burns. But there it was, intact enough to recognize. As my headlights swept through the open door, the mic glinted. I felt my stomach drop, slow and cold, because I knew, in the way you know a detail that matters, that mic was warm. Not glowing hot, not smoking, just warm, like it had been held in a hand. I didn't stop. I didn't even let myself consider it. I pressed the accelerator, letting the engine climb, trailer tugging as I gained speed. The burned rig disappeared behind me, swallowed by fog and pine. A minute later, my CB snapped back to life. Not on 19, not on 9. All channels at once, like overlapping whispers. A layered hiss that sounded like breath moving through a crowd. Then, clear as if the speaker were seated in my passenger seat, the same strained voice came through. You saw it. I kept my eyes forward, jaw tight. Who are you? I said, and hated that my voice came out rougher than I wanted. You don't want to know, he answered. You just want out. My headlights caught something ahead, 2 pale points at the edge of the fog, low to the ground. Reflectors? Eyes? A sign? They drifted sideways across the lane and disappeared. My hands made a micro-correction without me thinking. The road felt narrower now, like the trees had leaned in closer. I'm not stopping, I said into the mic. I'm rolling through. A sound like a laugh, small and broken. Good. The fog thickened suddenly, not like weather moving in, but like a curtain being pulled across the road. The beam of my headlights turned into a white tunnel. My speed dropped to 40 without me deciding to. My mirrors filled with nothing but the glow of my own trailer lights fading into milk-white haze. Then I saw headlights behind me. Close. Too close. Twin beams punching through fog, riding my bumper like they'd been there the whole time. No clearance lights above them. No marker lights. Just headlights, bright and flat, hovering at the exact height of a car. My mirrors had been empty. Now they weren't. The voice on the CB whispered, "Don't look too long." I didn't want to, but I did anyway because the mirror is where danger comes from in this job. The headlights behind me stayed perfectly centered, never bobbing with the road. They didn't brighten or dim like a real vehicle adjusting speed. They were fixed, steady, patient. I tapped my brakes lightly, just enough to flash my brake lights without slowing much. If it was a tailgater, that usually makes them back off. The headlights didn't change. Then my radio hissed again, and the voice said, almost tired, "It's not a car." My throat went dry. My hands were cold on the wheel. The cab felt too small, sealed in warm air that suddenly seemed stale. Ahead, the fog thinned for a moment and I saw a pull-off area. Just gravel and a broken guardrail. No sign, no light. And standing near it were 3 reflective vests, bright strips catching my headlights. Road crew? State DOT? They stood in a line, facing the road, motionless. No cones, no truck, no flares, just vests in the dark. My brain tried to make it normal, people waiting for help, for a tow, for a ride. But the voice on the CB cut through the thought. Don't stop. As my truck approached, the figures didn't wave. They didn't raise a flashlight. They didn't step back from the shoulder. They stepped forward. All 3 at once, into the lane, like they'd been timed to my speed. I swore under my breath and jerked the wheel left, hugging the center line. There was no oncoming traffic, but the fog made it feel like there should be. My trailer followed with a slow, heavy sway. The reflective strips on those vests flashed bright in my headlights. And in that half-second of visibility, I saw there was nothing inside them. No bodies, no arms, no faces, just vests shaped like people, hanging in the air, drifting forward as if carried by invisible shoulders. My heart kicked hard. I straightened out, tires barking slightly, and powered through. The moment my trailer cleared them, my cab filled with the sound of something hitting metal. 3 soft thumps along the side of the trailer, spaced like footsteps. Then the headlights behind me surged closer, as if whatever was back there had accelerated. The voice on the CB said, "They're trying to get you to stop." I didn't answer. I just drove, breathing shallow, eyes locked forward. The road sign for the interstate finally appeared out of the fog like a lifeline. Reflective green, white letters, arrow pointing to the on-ramp. I took it hard, too fast for comfort, trailer tires grumbling as they climbed the curve. My hands moved like they were doing it on their own, steady, trained, precise. At the top of the ramp, as I merged into the interstate lanes with real pavement and real reflectors and the faint glow of distant city light, I checked my mirrors again. The headlights behind me were gone. Just gone. Like they'd never existed. My CB returned to normal static. Channel 19 crackled with a guy talking about coffee at a truck stop 30 miles ahead. A normal voice in a normal world. I drove another 20 minutes before I pulled into a bright, busy rest area with cameras and vending machines and actual humans walking between cars. My hands were shaking when I set the brake. I sat there a long time, staring at my steering wheel, listening to the engine tick as it cooled. Then I did something I almost never do. I opened my phone and searched for news about a burned rig on Black Pine Highway near Pine Cutoff. Nothing recent. Just one small archived article from years ago about a crash that took a driver's life in a cab fire. Cause unknown. No suspects. Case closed. The article included a photo. The burned cab door was open, and in the doorway, hanging by its cord, was a CB mic. Later, after dawn, when I was fueling up at a truck stop and trying to act normal, I turned on my CB just to prove to myself it was real radio again. Channel 9 was quiet, but before I switched away, a voice slipped through. So faint I almost missed it. Not strained this time, not rushed, just tired. "Driver," it said, "don't stop near Pine Cutoff." And for the rest of that run, no matter what channel I switched to, the background hiss sounded like breathing. Rain on a windshield at night has its own language. It's not loud like a storm. It's a soft, constant peppering that turns every headlight into a smear and every reflective sign into a flare. You learn to read the road through that blur. Lane lines, shoulder texture, the darker shade where the asphalt dips. You learn to trust the wipers like a heartbeat. That night I was running north with a light dry load, box goods, nothing hazardous, pulling a 53-foot van behind my Cascadia. My logbook was clean, my hours were good, and my plan was simple. Cut through Black Pine Highway, shave time, fuel up at the big truck stop past the ridge, then keep pushing before daylight. It was just after 3 a.m. when the forest closed in and the rain turned from drizzle to mist. Not enough to puddle, just enough to hang in the air and make the world feel closer than it should. The pines along Black Pine aren't spaced like normal woods. They press tight to the shoulder, tall and straight, trunks disappearing into black canopy. My low beams caught the nearest branches, the wet needles shining like glass. Inside the cab, it was warm and stale, the smell of diesel, damp jacket fabric, and coffee that had been reheated too many times. The heater was on low, just enough to keep the fog off the side windows. The steering wheel vibrated under my palms with that familiar highway tremor. Tires hummed. Trailer followed steady. CB was on. Mostly empty. Black Pine gets quiet at night. That's normal. What isn't normal is when the quiet feels like it's leaning in. I saw the headlights about 10 miles in. At first, it was just a faint glow between the trees to my right. Too far back to be a roadside reflector, too steady to be lightning. 2 points of light, low and level, like a vehicle running with its beams on. The problem was there was no road there. Nothing but ditch, underbrush, and dense forest. I took a quick mirror check. Nothing behind me, nothing ahead. No cars, no marker lights, no oncoming traffic. The lights stayed, not drifting, not bouncing, holding a steady position deep in the woods, parallel to my cab, like something was pacing me on an invisible lane. I told myself it was a service road. Logging companies cut private access roads all over these parts. You don't always see the entrances in the dark. A truck could be running an internal route, far back from the highway. But the longer I watched, the less that fit. The lights didn't flicker when the trees thickened. They didn't disappear behind trunks the way they should if they were really deep in the forest. They slid with me, smooth as if nothing obstructed them. My wipers swept. The rain hissed across the glass. The world outside stayed gray-black and tight. I eased off the throttle a little, down from 55 to 48, just to see what the lights would do. They slowed too, perfectly. No lag, no overshoot, just matched. That's when my mouth went dry. You can explain a lot on the road, but you can't explain something matching you that clean unless it can see you and choose to do it. I pressed the CB mic, more out of habit than hope. Any drivers on Black Pine? You got company out here? Static. A low hiss. No voices. No chatter. The lights stayed level with my cab for mile after mile. I tried not to stare, but the right side of my vision kept pulling toward them. Every time the road curved left, I expected the lights to fall behind. Instead, they arced through the trees with me, keeping the same distance, as if the forest itself was turning to stay aligned. The next reflective sign came up, Pine Ridge 7 miles, and flared white in my beams. For a second, the light from the sign backlit the woods. In that instant, I saw something that made my stomach tighten. A shape between the trees, tall, squared off, like a truck cab. Not close to the road, deeper than it should be. But the silhouette was there, and it looked too straight-edged to be natural. Then the sign passed, and the woods went black again. The headlights remained. I didn't like how steady they were. I didn't like how quiet the forest felt around them. And I especially didn't like that I couldn't see any movement besides those 2 points of light. At 3:21 a.m., I hit a wider shoulder section where guys sometimes pull over to check straps or take a leak. It wasn't an official turnout, just a gravel widening with a broken guardrail and a drainage culvert. I made a decision fast, one of those driver instincts that isn't heroic, just practical. I slowed and signaled right. If those lights were a real vehicle, it would either pass me on the highway or continue deeper on its own road. Either way, stopping would break the pattern. My truck rolled onto the gravel and shuddered as the tires left the smooth asphalt. I set the brake, hazards ticking softly. The engine idled, low rumble filling the cab. And the headlights in the trees stopped too. Not drifting forward, not overshooting, just stopped. Exactly level with my cab, now stationary, still deep in the woods, still pointed toward the highway. The rain misted the side window. I leaned toward it, trying to see more. All I could make out were those 2 beams cutting between trunks. No marker lights, no reflections off chrome, no cabin glow. I waited 10 seconds, 15. My heartbeat felt loud in the quiet cab. The heater breathed warm air across my knees. My hand hovered near the shifter like that would help. Then, very slowly, the headlights brightened. Not like someone flashed brights, like they rolled forward, closer through the trees. The beams widened, spilling more light across wet branches. I saw needles glitter. I saw a trunk throw a long shadow. And behind those lights, just for a moment, I saw the outline again. A truck. Big. High. A squared hood line, tall stacks, or maybe a logging rack silhouette behind it. Something heavy enough that it shouldn't be able to move through that forest without a road. The headlights dipped slightly, like it was crawling over uneven ground, still coming toward me. I released the brake and eased back onto the highway with a hard swallow, hazards clicking off as I accelerated. The gravel popped under the tires. The trailer tugged as it straightened. The headlights in the woods moved too, keeping pace again. I pushed faster, 60, then 65, watching my mirrors for deer, for cops, for anything. The rain made the road shine like oil, so I kept it controlled. But I didn't slow. I didn't want to give whatever that was time to match me again if I hesitated. The lights stayed with me. It wasn't just pacing. It was escorting, like a vehicle running parallel on a track only it could see. A mile later, the forest opened a little near a low ridge. My right side window cleared enough that I could see deeper between the trunks. That's when I noticed something else. The headlights weren't quite right. Real headlights scatter through rain. They halo. They flicker when branches interrupt them. These didn't. They cut clean through mist, too steady, too controlled, like stage lights. I took my eyes off them and forced myself to focus on the lane lines. A driver who stares into the woods is a driver who drifts. Then my CB crackled. One sharp pop. One breath of static. A voice came through, low and rough, like it was dragging itself across the frequency. Keep your lane. It wasn't on a clear channel. It sounded like it was speaking through wet cloth. It wasn't a warning like a friendly trucker. It was an order. I didn't answer. My thumb stayed off the mic. My hands stayed steady. I watched the road. Another pop. The voice again, closer. Don't look. My neck prickled. My eyes flicked to the mirror without meaning to, then back to the lane. The headlights were still there in the trees. Then, ahead, I saw the glow of an actual place. The truck stopped past the ridge, big sodium lights reflecting off wet pavement. A cluster of real taillights and parked trailers. The sight hit me like relief, like oxygen. I took the exit without hesitation. The ramp curved down, and the world opened up. Floodlights, signage, people-shaped movement near the fuel island. My tires rolled over the rumble strip and onto bright pavement. For the first time in miles, I wasn't alone. And the headlights in the trees, they didn't follow. They stayed back at the edge of the forest, just beyond the last line of light from the lot. 2 points, low and steady, watching the exit like an animal that won't cross into open ground. I parked in a spot near the center of the lot where cameras and overhead lights made shadows thin. I killed the engine and sat there with both hands on the wheel, listening to the cooling ticks and the distant sounds of other trucks. Air brakes sighing, a door slam, someone laughing near the store entrance. I thought I was safe. Then a driver knocked on my passenger door. I looked up and saw a man in a rain jacket, hood up, older face lined like he'd lived in wind. He pointed toward my trailer, then made a small gesture like, "Roll your window down." I cracked it an inch. Cold air and diesel fumes rushed in. He leaned close, voice quiet. "You just come off Black Pine?" I nodded once. He didn't look surprised. His eyes flicked toward the dark line of trees beyond the lot, like he expected to see something there. "You see the headlights?" he asked. My throat tightened. "Yeah." He exhaled slowly through his nose. "Logging truck," he said, like it was a known thing. "But it ain't a truck anymore." I didn't speak. I just waited. He tapped 2 knuckles against my door. A nervous habit. "Old story up here," he said. "Company ran loads through the woods at night. One rig never came back. Driver disappeared. They found the trailer weeks later. Empty. Half buried off a cut road that wasn't on any map." He paused, eyes still on the trees. "They say it still runs," he added. "But it never comes out of the woods." The rain ticked on my mirror. Someone's diesel started nearby, vibration rolling through the lot. "Because it never finished its last run," he finished. He straightened up, like the conversation was over, and started walking away. I watched him go, then looked past the bright lot into the darkness beyond the fuel lights. The tree line was just a black wall now. No headlights, no glow. But when I reached for my CB to turn it down, the speaker hissed softly, like breathing, and for 1 second, underneath the static, I heard the deep, slow grind of an engine working under load, as if something heavy was still pulling through wet timber, trying to find the road. Rest Area 17 wasn't on my newer maps. That's the first thing that should have kept me rolling past it. I run with a tablet mounted on the dash and a backup GPS because I don't like surprises, construction, closures, weight limits. I'm not the kind of driver who goes hunting for secret shortcuts or pulls into places that look abandoned. I've seen enough busted glass and odd tire tracks at dead pull-offs to know the difference between a safe break and a bad decision. But that morning I was running thin. Not tired like nodding off. More like that hollow, last-hour fatigue where the world feels slightly delayed. I'd been hauling a drive-in north, light load, nothing hazmat, nothing that needed babysitting. White Cascadia, 53-foot van, fuel just under half, air pressure solid, temps normal. I'd cleared my last delivery window by the skin of it and decided to grab a quick break before the sun fully came up. It was the kind of pre-dawn that doesn't feel like morning yet. The sky was a flat charcoal, rain earlier still clinging to the trees. The road was mostly empty, just the occasional oncoming car throwing a brief flare of light across wet pavement. The heater in my cab kept the glass from fogging, but I could still smell the outside through the vents. Damp pine needles, cold earth, and diesel from my own exhaust. My tablet showed the next official rest area was still 30 miles out. Then my headlights caught a sign on the right shoulder that didn't match the others. It was green, reflective, but older, faded around the edges like it had been sunburned for years. The lettering looked off, like the state's font had changed since it was made. Rest area 17 to 1 mile. I blinked because I didn't remember it being on this stretch at all. And my GPS didn't chirp. No rest stop ahead. No icon. Nothing. I glanced down at the screen. Still just the highway line, no rest symbol. My backup unit said the same. Maybe it was a local pull-off. Maybe the databases were updated and the sign wasn't. Either way, a mile later I saw the exit. It wasn't a full cloverleaf or a big ramp. It was a narrow cut in the shoulder, a simple deceleration lane, like a maintenance entrance. The guardrail ended abruptly. The pavement beyond looked darker, older. My headlights swallowed it, and beyond that was just a tunnel of trees. I told myself I'd just pull in, stretch my legs, splash water on my face, and roll back out. 10 minutes. I signaled and eased off, feeling the trailer settle behind me as I left the highway. The moment I turned onto the ramp, the world got quieter. Like the highway noise stayed behind, sealed away. My tires thumped on patched asphalt. Branches hung low over the road, and droplets fell in slow ticks onto my windshield. The wipers squeaked once, then stopped. A few hundred yards in, the rest area opened up. 2 rows of parking, cracked lines barely visible, a couple of picnic tables dark with wetness. A small concrete restroom building sat at the far end, its exterior painted a tired beige. There were no vending machines, no bright signage, no posted rules. Just an old information board with peeling paper and rusted screws. And there was one other truck, parked near the far row, angled slightly crooked like the driver hadn't lined it up. It was an older rig, dark paint, dull chrome. Its engine idling, exhaust puffing in slow white bursts into the cold air. Marker lights glowed steady. From where I sat, I couldn't see anyone moving around it. That should have been reassuring. One truck means it's not completely dead, right? Some other driver had found the place and felt safe enough to stop. But something about it felt wrong. The idling was too steady, too constant, like it had been running a long time. And the truck looked still. No door opening. No cab light flicker. No shadow shifting behind the windshield. I parked 2 spaces away. Close enough that we'd see each other if we stepped out. Far enough that I wasn't blocking anyone. Set the brake. Killed my engine. The sudden silence made my ears ring. Outside, the air was colder than I expected. It bit through my jacket and made my lungs feel tight on the first breath. The ground under my boots was damp and gritty. Pine smell was strong here, fresh and heavy, like crushed needles. I looked over at the other truck. Its cab windows were black. No driver silhouette. No interior glow. The wipers were frozen mid-sweep, like someone had turned them off halfway. The engine kept idling. I walked toward the restroom building, keeping my keys in my pocket and my phone in my hand. That's another driver habit. No keys left in the truck in sketchy places. Don't give anyone an easy opportunity. The restroom door was metal, painted the same beige, with a small window that had been fogged from the inside. I pushed it open. The smell hit me immediately. Not the usual chemical cleaner smell. Not urine, not trash. It smelled like damp pine and diesel, like someone had stored fuel-soaked rags in a wet cabin. The lights inside were on, but they flickered in a slow pulse, dimming and brightening like an old fluorescent dying. The hum of them was low and uneven, like an insect trapped in a jar. The place was clean enough, old but not vandalized. A row of sinks with cracked porcelain. A line of stalls, mirrors cloudy with age. A hand dryer bolted to the wall with missing screws. I stepped toward the sinks, turned the faucet. Water came out cold and steady. I splashed my face, let it sting me awake. My breath showed faint in the mirror, thin ghost of fog on glass. That's when I heard footsteps behind me. Not loud, not running, just the soft scrape of rubber on tile. I froze with my hands on the sink, water running between my fingers. The footsteps stopped. I looked up at the mirror first because that's instinct, you catch movement without turning your back. The mirror showed the restroom behind me. Empty. No one in the doorway. No one near the stalls. Just flickering light and my own reflection. Face damp, eyes tired. I shut the water off slowly. The silence that followed felt thick, like the room didn't want to let go of sound. The stall door creaked. Not swung open, just a small shift, like it had been nudged from the inside. I told myself it was air pressure. Old hinges. My imagination leaning too hard because I'd been up all night. Cleared my throat. "Hey," I said, voice low. "You all right in there?" No answer. The flickering lights dimmed until the restroom felt gray. For a second, the corners of the room looked deeper, farther away. Then the lights brightened again. I heard the footsteps again. This time they moved behind me, slow, like someone circling the sinks. But the mirror still showed nothing. My skin tightened on my arms. I could feel the hair lift. The restroom smelled stronger now, diesel sharp at the back of my throat. I turned anyway, fast. Nothing. The stalls sat silent. The door to the outside was still closed behind me. I could see the fogged window, faint gray daylight trying to seep through. The footsteps came again, 2 quick steps, then stopped right behind me. Close enough that I should have felt breath on my neck. I didn't. There was no warmth, no exhale, just the sense of presence, like standing near an idling engine with the hood open. My hand went to the door latch without me deciding it. I pushed the door open and stepped out into cold air. The sky had brightened slightly, still dawn gray, but lighter around the horizon. The damp pine smell outside should have been relieving. Instead, it felt like the world had its volume turned down. I looked immediately toward the other truck. It was still there, still idling. No movement. I walked faster now, heading back to my own rig. My boots clicked on wet pavement. I kept my eyes scanning, tree line, picnic tables, the information board. Halfway to my truck, I glanced up at the security camera pole near the lot entrance. Every rest area has one pole with a couple cameras, maybe a light. This one had a pole, but it wasn't upright. It was twisted, bent at a weird angle like someone had grabbed it and dragged it sideways. The base bolts were torn. The concrete around it was cracked. The cameras themselves hung crooked, pointing at nothing. I stopped and stared. My brain tried to assemble a normal reason for that storm damage, vehicle impact. But there were no skid marks, no fresh debris, no broken plastic. It looked like something had taken hold of the pole and pulled hard. A low rumble rolled across the lot. For a second, I thought it was thunder, until I realized it was coming from the other truck. Its engine tone changed, dropped lower, like the throttle had been touched. Then the marker lights on its trailer flickered once. I looked at the cab. Still dark, still no silhouette, and yet the engine kept idling as if someone sat inside, foot near the pedal. My phone had no signal. Of course it didn't. Black pine pockets do that. But in that moment, the lack of signal felt deliberate, like the trees were holding it back. I got into my truck fast, slammed the door, and locked it. The cab smelled like familiar things, vinyl, coffee, my own sweat, comforting compared to that restroom. I stuck the key in, started the engine. It fired immediately, vibration returning through the seat and wheel. Air pressure climbed, gauges steady. I was about to release the brake when the CB crackled. Not on 19, not on any clear channel. Just a burst of static that sounded like paper being crumpled. And then a voice, thin, distant, as if transmitted from far away. "Shift isn't over." My stomach dropped. I grabbed the mic. "Who's on the line?" I said, keeping my voice steady. "You need help." Static swallowed my words. Then the voice again, closer this time, with a tired weight behind it. "Trucks still running." My eyes snapped to the lot. The other truck's marker lights glowed steady. Its exhaust puffed. It was still idling. And then, without warning, my cab lights flickered. Not the dash, not the headlights. The interior dome light above my head blinked once, dimmed, then came back, like the restroom lights. My hands tightened on the wheel. I stared through the windshield at the gray lot, the twisted camera pole, the silent building. And in the corner of my vision, in my passenger side mirror, I saw movement near the restroom door, a shadow crossing the doorway. But when I turned my head, there was nothing. The mirror showed it again, just a smear of darkness moving where it shouldn't. My CB hissed softly, like breathing. Then the voice said something that made my blood go cold. "Don't clock out." I didn't wait to think. I released the brake and rolled forward, tires crunching over wet gravel. I kept my speed controlled but steady, heading straight for the exit lane. As I passed the other truck, I forced myself to glance into its cab. The window glass was filmed with condensation from the inside, and pressed against it, faint, as if someone had leaned close, was the shape of a handprint. Not a clean human handprint, too long in the fingers, too smeared, like someone had dragged their palm down the glass and then stopped, right at eye level, as if watching me leave. I turned my eyes back to the road and didn't look again. I hit the ramp and climbed back onto the highway. The moment my tires crossed the rumble strip, my phone buzzed, signal returning, and the world's normal sounds came back. Distant traffic hum, wind in the mirrors, the familiar rhythm of driving. But my GPS stayed blank for a second, recalculating, and on the screen, just for a moment, an icon appeared where it shouldn't have. A rest stop marker. No name, just a number, 17. Then it vanished. Later that afternoon, when I fueled up at a small town station and asked a local behind the counter about Rest Area 17, she didn't even blink. She just shook her head once and said, "They shut that place down years ago." I asked why. She lowered her voice, not like she was telling a ghost story, like she was stating a fact everyone in town already knew. "Driver vanished," she said. "Mid-shift. Truck still running. They found it idling in the lot with nobody inside. Doors locked. Restroom lights on. Like he stepped out and never stepped back." I tried to smile like I didn't believe her. She didn't smile back. "You didn't stop there," she said, watching my face. It wasn't a question. That night, back in my cab at a lit truck stop with real cameras and real people, I pulled up my map history and searched the route. No Rest Area 17. No exit. Nothing. But when I flipped on my CB to drown out the silence, the speaker hissed for a long time, soft, steady. And beneath it, faint as a whisper through pine needles, I heard a voice say, "Shift isn't over." Fog changes the rules out there. It turns distance into guesswork and headlights into a white wall. You stop trusting your eyes and start driving by feel. Lane line rhythm, the crown of the road, the subtle pull of your trailer when the pavement slopes. The worst part isn't what you can't see. It's what the fog convinces you did see. That night I was running a white Cascadia with a 53-foot dry van, northbound on a state highway that feeds into the interstate. Nothing special, just box freight, sealed doors, a delivery window that didn't care about weather. My hours were legal. My coffee was bad. My cab was warm enough that my hands didn't ache on the wheel. It was a little after 1:40 a.m. when the fog thickened into something real, low, wet, and heavy, rolling in from the tree line like smoke. My beams cut a short tunnel through it. The rest of the world disappeared. CB was quiet. That's normal on back roads. The engine hummed steady. Wipers squeaked every few seconds. The air inside the cab smelled like diesel heat and stale caffeine. I had the defroster up just enough to keep the windshield clear, and the side windows still held a faint film of moisture. I was watching the right shoulder more than usual. Fog nights are deer nights, and deer don't care about DOT numbers. That's why I almost missed him. A shape in the fog, human height, standing close to the shoulder, arm raised, waving hard like he was trying to get my attention before I passed. Reflective strips flashed bright when my headlights caught them. I eased off the throttle immediately. Not slammed brakes, just a controlled deceleration, because stopping a loaded rig on wet pavement in fog is how you end up on the news. My hazards clicked on, slow and steady. I rolled to a stop with my right tires on the shoulder and my left still hugging the lane, keeping the trailer straight. He walked up fast. Reflective vest. Dark pants. No hard hat. No truck behind him. No cones. No flashing amber lights. Nothing that said work zone. Just a man in a vest, appearing out of fog like a cutout. I cracked the passenger window a few inches. Cold, damp air pushed in immediately, carrying the smell of wet asphalt and pine. "You all right?" I asked. His face was pale in my headlights. Not sick pale, more like the color had been washed out of him. He didn't look panicked. He didn't look injured. He just looked tired, the way guys look after a long shift. "Can you take me to the next junction?" he asked. His voice was normal, not slurred, not shaky, just flat, like he'd been repeating the question for a while. I glanced behind him into the fog. Nothing. No stranded car. No blinking hazards. No road crew. "Where's your truck?" I asked. He pointed back into the fog without looking. "Down there." That didn't help. Fog makes down there mean anything. I could have been 10 feet from his vehicle and not seen it. I did the quick safety math drivers do. A lone man in vest, middle of the night, empty road. It's not ideal. But it also wasn't some guy in street clothes trying to wave me down. Reflective vests usually mean work. And leaving someone on a foggy shoulder feels wrong. I reached across and unlocked the passenger door. "Hop up," I said. "Quick. I'm not sitting here long." He opened the door and climbed in. The second he stepped into my cab, the temperature dropped. Not gradually. Not draft from the open door. It was instant, like someone had dumped a bucket of winter air into the truck. My breath caught. The warm cab smell, diesel heat, coffee, got pushed aside by something colder, sharper. The fog on the passenger window thickened instantly, blooming across the glass like frost. He sat down and pulled the door shut with a quiet click. The cab felt different now. Smaller, sealed. I watched him from the corner of my eye as I put my truck back in gear. His vest was old, frayed at the edges, reflective tape dulled and scratched. It wasn't the bright new kind crews wear now. It looked like something pulled from a storage locker that hadn't been opened in years. "Seatbelt," I said automatically. He didn't move. I looked at him more directly then, and that's when I noticed the strangest thing. He didn't blink. Not once. His eyes were open and still, fixed straight ahead through the fogged windshield like he was watching something far beyond the beam of my headlights. I eased back onto the road, speed low, hazards off. The fog swallowed the shoulder behind us. My trailer followed with a steady tug. The engine note stayed constant, but my hands felt stiff on the wheel now, like the cold had gotten into my joints. I tried to bring the cab heat up, turned the dial. Nothing changed. The vents kept blowing, but the air coming out felt lukewarm at best, like the heater had lost its fight. Cleared my throat. "So where you working at?" I asked. "Crew out here tonight?" He didn't answer right away. The silence between us felt heavy. The only sounds were wipers, tire hum, and the faint tick of my blinker canceling. Then he said very calmly, "This road." I nodded like that made sense. "State job?" I asked. He finally turned his head toward me, slow and stiff, like his neck wasn't used to moving. Up close, his skin looked wrong. Not decayed, not bloody, just flat, like the life had been pressed out of it. His lips were pale. His eyelashes were wet with mist, and his vest smelled like cold metal and damp soil. "Where you based out of?" I asked, keeping my voice even. "You get separated from your crew?" He stared at me a second. Still no blink. Then he said, "I died fixing this road." My grip tightened on the wheel. My eyes stayed forward, because drivers don't do sudden turns toward passengers at night. But every nerve in my body reacted like I just heard a tire blow. "You what?" I said, quiet. He didn't change expression. "I died," he repeated, like he was stating his job title. "Right here." A chill crawled up my spine. Not from the cold in the cab, from the certainty in his voice. I forced logic in again. Shock, trauma. Maybe he'd lost someone. Maybe he was messing with me. "You're saying you got hurt out here?" I asked. "You need me to call someone?" He didn't look at my phone mounted on the dash. He didn't look at the road signs. He just watched the fog. "Years ago," he said, the fog outside thickened and thinned in slow waves. My headlights made the road feel like it ended 20 feet ahead. The next junction should have been 5 miles up, according to my route. I watched for reflective signs like they were lifelines. Then my CB crackled, one sharp pop, like it had picked up a transmission. Only it wasn't on a channel. It was just a hiss, and underneath it, faint and distorted, I heard something that sounded like a voice saying my truck number. I glanced at the radio. The display flickered once, then steadied. The man didn't react. "You hearing that?" I asked. He turned his head slightly, like he was listening to something I couldn't hear. Then he said, "They didn't stop." My throat tightened. "Who didn't?" His eyes stayed fixed forward. "The driver," he said. "He didn't see me." The words landed heavy, precise. I started to picture it without wanting to. Fog, a shoulder, a man in a vest, headlights too late, the sound of impact you can't take back. A work zone at night, a mistake that becomes a death. My cab got colder. The inside of my windshield began to fog at the edges, even with the defroster blasting. A thin film of condensation crawled across the glass, softening the view. I swallowed hard. "What junction you need?" I asked, trying to keep it practical. "I'm dropping you at the first on-ramp." He nodded once. Still no blink. As we approached the junction, the fog thinned enough that I could see the reflective sign ahead. White letters, arrow to the right. My relief was physical. I signaled and eased into the turn lane. That's when the man spoke again, softer. "This is where it happened." I slowed more than necessary. My eyes flicked to the shoulder as we turned. And there it was, a small roadside memorial half hidden by wet grass. A wooden cross, faded. A reflective vest draped over it, old and torn, reflective tape peeling. My stomach dropped. My hands went numb. I looked at the man beside me. His vest matched the one on the cross. Same frayed edge. Same dull, reflective strip pattern. The turn brought us under a streetlight that barely cut through the fog. In that weak yellow light, his skin looked almost translucent. He shifted in the seat, finally moving like a normal person. He reached for the door handle. "Wait," I said, voice strained. "What's your name?" He paused with his hand on the latch. For the first time, his eyes met mine directly. They were wet, glassy, and empty in a way that made my chest feel tight. "I was wearing this vest," he said simply. "So you'd stop." Then he opened the door and stepped out. The cold hit harder when the door opened, like the outside air was trying to invade. I leaned slightly to watch him go, half expecting his boots on pavement, his vest stripes fading into fog. But the moment his feet touched the ground, he vanished. No fade, no sprint into fog. Just gone, like the space he occupied snapped back into emptiness. The passenger door swung slightly, then settled. My cab warmth returned in a rush, like the heater suddenly remembered it worked. The windshield cleared at the edges. My breath stopped showing. I sat there frozen with both hands on the wheel, heart pounding, staring at the open passenger door. Then my CB crackled again. This time it was clear. A dispatcher's voice, distant and official, like it was coming from a recording. "Unit, report of a fatality at junction. Road crew, male. Reflective vest." The transmission cut out, replaced by hiss. I reached over with a shaking hand and pulled the passenger door shut. The click sounded too loud in the cab. I didn't stay. I didn't pull over to think. I merged onto the on-ramp and drove like the fog was chasing me. Later, at a truck stop with bright lights and cameras, I asked an older cashier about a road worker death near that junction. I didn't give details. I just said years ago and night shift. He didn't ask why. He just nodded slowly and said, "Yeah, guy got hit out there. Driver never even stopped." They found his vest shredded on the shoulder. I stared at him, throat tight. "What color vest?" I asked. He looked at me like I already knew. "Old style," he said. "Dull reflective tape. Like the kind they don't use anymore." That night, when I climbed back into my cab and locked the doors, I kept staring at my passenger seat. It looked normal, empty, slightly creased where nobody sat. But the fabric was damp. And on the edge of the seatbelt, right where a hand would pull it across the chest. There was a faint smear of wet dirt, like someone had climbed in straight from the shoulder and left a piece of the road behind. The first time I saw Black Pine's way station lit up at night, I felt relief. That sounds stupid now, but if you drive long enough, you learn to love anything routine, anything official-looking with bright lights and clean rules. A way station means cameras. It means other trucks. It means a predictable stop where the worst thing that happens is you're a little heavy on the drives and you shuffle your tandems. That night, I'd been running northbound with a dry van. Boxed freight, sealed doors, nothing hazmat. My rig was my usual. Freightliner Cascadia, clean dash, no warning lights, trailer tracking straight. It was just after 1:50 a.m., cold enough that the air felt sharp in your lungs when you cracked the window. The road had been wet earlier, and now it was drying in patches, leaving that dark sheen that reflects your headlights like a mirror. Black Pine Highway is the kind of cut-through drivers use when dispatch is breathing down your neck. Pines packed tight on both sides, shoulders narrow, long stretches with no cell service and no streetlights. Just your beams, the hum of rubber, and your own thoughts bouncing around the cab. I'd run that route before, not often, but enough to recognize the flow. The long left curve after the old quarry, the gentle downhill where your trailer pushes, the little dip where your coffee sloshes if you're not careful. My heater was on low, cab warm and stale, smelling like diesel heat and old coffee. The steering wheel vibrated under my palms with that steady highway tremor. Wipers were off. The only sound was the engine's low pull and the faint rattle of something in the passenger door pocket. Then I saw the glow through the trees. At first I thought it was a truck stop. The light was that same harsh white, too bright for the forest, like a building had been dropped into the dark and forgotten. A few seconds later, the sign appeared in my headlights, reflective letters snapping into view. Black Pine Way Station, open. I sat up a little straighter. My GPS hadn't warned me about it, but that happens with small stations. I checked my mirrors, no one behind, no one ahead. Just me in a tunnel of pines. I took the ramp in, slowing smooth, letting the trailer follow without sway. The asphalt in the way station lot looked older than the highway, cracked in a spiderweb pattern, patched with darker strips. My tires rolled over the scale approach with a soft thump. The lane lights were on. The overhead sign glowed. The booth windows were bright with fluorescent light. But the place was empty. No DOT cruisers. No cones. No other trucks lined up. No workers outside. Just bright lights and stillness. That should have been my first warning. Even at 2 in the morning, you usually see something. Another driver pulled over in the inspection bay. A pickup parked crooked. A guy walking with a clipboard. A working way station feels alive. You hear intercom clicks. You see movement behind glass. You feel watched. This place felt like a stage set. I rolled onto the scale and stopped where the worn black marks told me to. The cab quieted as my speed dropped to 0. Air brakes sighed. Trailer settled. I waited for the usual. The loudspeaker crackle. The operator telling me, hold or pull forward. The booth door opened instead. A man stepped out. He wore a reflective vest and a dark jacket. No hat. No visible badge. He didn't walk like a bored employee. He moved slow and straight like his joints didn't want to bend. He raised one hand and made a simple motion, 2 fingers forward, wave through. No clipboard. No flashlight. No voice. I leaned toward my window and called out, "You want my paperwork?" He didn't react. He didn't even look at me. His eyes stayed on the scale area like he was reading something I couldn't see. The skin on his face looked pale under the fluorescent light, waxy. Almost like the color had been drained and replaced with a dull gray. His cheeks didn't move. No expression. He waved again, sharper this time, impatient. I told myself it was just the lighting. Some guys look weird under those bulbs at night. Some guys don't talk much. I've met plenty of scale house workers who act like speaking costs them money. So I eased forward. My trailer climbed onto the platform. The truck rocked slightly. I glanced down at my dashboard like I always do, checking air pressure and RPM as I creep. Then I looked at the scale display. It was mounted ahead of the lane. Big red digits, clear enough to read from the cab. The numbers were climbing, not settling, not blinking to lock in. Climbing. 32, 000, 34, 100, 36, 900. I was light that night. There was no way I was even close to max. But the digits didn't care. They just kept rising, smooth and continuous, like someone was cranking a dial. My hands tightened on the wheel. The red numbers rolled past 50,000, 60,000. I touched the brake lightly and stopped again, half on the scale. The trailer shuddered to a halt. The cab went quiet except for the heater breathing warm air across my knees. The display didn't stop, climbed faster now like the scale had found momentum. 71, 300, 79, 900, 85, 400. That's when I noticed the operator hadn't moved. He stood at the edge of the booth area, head tilted slightly, eyes fixed on the display like he was watching a gauge in a flooding room. He didn't look surprised. He didn't look concerned. He looked like this was exactly what he expected. I grabbed the CB mic out of habit, thumbed it, tried channel 19. Nothing but a low hiss, no chatter, no background static spikes, just a steady sound, soft and breathy, like air moving through a narrow pipe. I tried again. Breaker. Anyone near Black Pine Way? The hiss swallowed my words. My own voice sounded wrong in the cab, too loud against the stillness. The scale display hit 100,000 and kept going. At that point, my brain stopped offering reasonable explanations. Broken sensor doesn't do that. Calibration error doesn't do that. A scale doesn't just count up like a stopwatch. I shifted into gear and rolled off the platform fast. Faster than you're supposed to in a way station. The trailer clanked slightly as it left the metal. The cab bounced once. I didn't care. I just wanted out of that lane, away from that display. In my mirror, the red digits were still climbing, now well past anything that made sense. The operator raised his hand again. But this time he wasn't waving me through. He was waving me back. One finger curling inward, slow, precise, like he was calling a dog. I didn't stop. I didn't even look at him again. I aimed for the exit lane and pushed the truck into it, tires hissing on damp asphalt. As I passed the inspection bays, I saw something that made my stomach flip hard. The bays were lit, clean white light, empty floor, except for two reflective vests hanging from hooks on the wall. They weren't new vests. They were dusty, stiff, like they'd been there a long time. And beneath them, on the concrete, were two pairs of work boots, positioned neatly, toes facing outward, like someone had stepped out of them and never stepped back in. I hit the exit ramp and merged back onto the highway like I was fleeing a fire. The forest swallowed the way station light behind me in seconds. The road straightened. My headlights found their tunnel again. The world should have returned to normal. Didn't. The cab was colder now. Not freezing, but cold in a way the heater couldn't catch up with. My hands felt dry and tight on the wheel. The back of my neck prickled like I was being watched from the sleeper. My GPS screen flickered once. The route line jumped, recalculated, then returned. Then, very softly, my CB has changed. Under the steady breath noise, I heard something else. Faint, distant, like a transmission coming from far underground. A muffled tapping. Not Morse code. Not rhythmic enough. More like knocking. 2 knocks. Pause. 1 knock. Pause. Then another sound layered in. So low I almost convinced myself it was engine noise. A dull rumble, like concrete shifting under weight. I drove another 10 miles before I trusted myself to pull into a real, mapped truck stop, bright lights, cameras, rows of parked rigs. The moment I parked, set the brake, and killed the engine, the silence felt safer. Human silence. Normal silence. Inside the store, I bought coffee I didn't want just to have an excuse to stand under fluorescent lights with other people. I asked the cashier, an older guy with a tired face, about Black Pine's way station being open again. He didn't even blink. He just looked at me for a long second and said, "That place?" "Yeah," I said. "It was lit up. Booth had a guy." He shook his head slowly. "It's been closed for years." I laughed once, short, because my brain needed it to be a misunderstanding. No, it was open tonight. He leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice like he didn't want to summon something by speaking too loud. They shut it down, he said. After a collapse, inspection went bad. Concrete gave way under the scale house wing. 2 employees down there, buried. Couldn't get them out in time. My mouth went dry. When? 5 years, he said. Maybe a little more. I stood there, coffee cup warm in my hands, feeling like my cab had followed me inside. Sometimes, he added, eyes flicking toward the window like he expected to see pine trees beyond the lot. Drivers say they see it lit up. They say a man waves them through. They say the numbers don't stop. I didn't tell him what I saw in the inspection bay. I didn't tell him about the boots. I walked back to my truck and climbed in, locked the doors, and sat in the driver's seat for a long time staring at the dash. That's when my dispatch tablet pinged with a message. Confirm. You did not enter Black Pine Way Station. Route compliance flagged. That station has been closed 5+ years. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned. Then I opened my electronic logs because if nothing else, data tells the truth. Except it didn't. There was an entry I hadn't made. Stop. Way Station. Black Pine. 2:11 a.m. Cleared. My truck number was listed. My trailer number was listed. And under operator, there was no name, just 2 letters, BP. I sat there listening to the lot noise, air brakes, Distan, XZMLDM, DLA, C/ZA, T engines, people talking, normal life. I reached to turn my CB down so I could finally sleep. And when my fingers touched the knob, the speaker hissed once, soft and close, like breath beside my ear. Under it, faint as a memory, I heard a man's voice, calm and flat, say, "Pull back on."